following program on Derana 24 is classified for general audience. It is intended for all ages. It contains little or no violence, no strong language, and little or no sexual dialogue or situations. We would like to remind our viewers that the views expressed in this program by our participating guests are solely viewpoints of them who take part, and does not reflect the views and beliefs of the Derana Media Network.
Welcome down to Gen XYZ right here on Derana 24. Well, today we're going to talk about the future. Yep, you heard me right. Future is something that we all don't really see. We talk about the past, we talk about the present, but we never talk about the future. That is exactly why today we're going to talk to you and reveal the methodologies. Yep, you heard me right. There's also something called a methodology, a theory, and so much more about the future. Well, that is exactly why we're going to join and talk to you about the future right here on Gen XYZ. Well, thank you so much for joining us today. Thank you so much. Thank you so much for joining us today. Let's take a seat and have a little conversation. Obviously, I'm quite glad that you guys are on board today of the show because we're going to talk about the future. We usually don't talk about the future. We never talk about the future. And we are definitely excited to do that for sure today. So we're joining in with Alicia Fernando, who's the Managing Director for Foresight Envoy, along with Dr. Sana De Silva, who is the Head of the Faculty of Strategic Studies for the KDU institution. Well, thank you so much for actually doing this with us on Gen XYZ. Well, we've got to talk about the future. Now, the second that, Alicia, when you approached me and you were like, you know, there's something called a future study. And I was very confused. I was like, future study, like what exactly is this? So tell us a little bit as to what this subject is, the future.
Yes. This is basically called as futures studies. That signals another S is there, that means plural. So that means alternative futures it talks about. And also when it comes to future studies, we also call it as forecasting and futures thinking. These are some of the other names, synonyms you can use by. So future studies is a systematic study of possible, probable and preferred futures. And it is very important to note that future studies is a cross-disciplinary subject. That means you can apply this in various subjects, or that means diverse fields. And also it is important to note that future studies, though it is very much new to Sri Lanka, it was rooted as an academic field back in late 1960s. So it is rooted in sociology and policy sciences as well. So that is a bit of historical backdrop. And also when it comes to future studies, we are mainly focusing on alternative futures. That is the most important aspect to deal with.
Okay, so alternative future meaning what exactly? I don't understand that part.
Yes, so that means futures is not just one future we are focusing on. So to expand the discourse of futures, let me talk a bit about the development of future studies. Firstly, the future studies was focusing on actually forecasting and predicting. Now it has further moved towards alternative futures by shaping desired future. That means like you're not, when it comes to futures, it is not just one future there are alternative futures. So this is very important aspect for the youth, because for the youth we always think like we try to curtail them in like one box, I would say. We say, okay, this is your future, but why not we give them an eye opening, like there are many futures, there are alternative futures. So that would be the main application when it comes to future of youth in Sri Lanka.
Okay, that sounds very interesting actually, because like you usually don't talk about the future. Now you mentioned something very interesting, Alicia, in terms of being in a box. You know, when you're in school, when you're in nursery, they teach you to think out of the box. They always say it's color, it's just don't think into a box. You know, think out of the world, because your possibilities in the future is endless. But the second you go into grade 5, the second you go into school, all of those things end up, nope, this is your ideation, this is the box you need to be in, you have to achieve this, you have to get this grade. If you don't get this grade, you're going to be a failure. Or I would quote Sri Lankans, and especially in Sri Lanka, they would be like, you're going to be a kunuman. That's what they say. But that is a sad reality of Sri Lanka, right? And then this is very interesting because even though it's in university that you're teaching this, because it's something that, okay, I know what my future is. I'm going to be doing law. I'm going to be doing medical. I'm going to do, sociology. But you still say, no, but then you're going to reignite the childhood that you had of endless possibilities into your university years. So that is very interesting. But where did this whole thing come about? And what do you have to say in terms of the school system? Because you went through a school system in Sri Lanka. It's boxing you into that mindset, that ideation. What is your thought on that?
Well, when it comes to our Sri Lankan education system, I would say we are still in like a very traditional approach we are taking. Mainly the classroom lessons we are focusing on, and we have like these subjects, these are the subjects you have to follow, and you're always given a syllabus, and teachers are mainly going forward in, covering the syllabus at the end of the term. So that is like the main hassle going on in education. But actually, have we given a chance for the students to scale their future? That is the important question. Now, when I was doing some of these activities with my students, especially when it comes to futures and leadership skills development, we do this activity called planning for success. So there we take 3 stages, right? Mapping the history, that means mapping the past, understanding the present, and planning for future. So in that backdrop, when it comes to futures, we give them a chance to discuss, think about the known unknowns, curveballs, setting goals. So when it comes to this activity, there was one result, one undergraduate, I really don't know he or she, this particular student replied. Now this student is an undergraduate following a particular course program there in the university, but her dream is to have her own ice cream brand in Sri Lanka. Okay. So then again, also this particular student has commented, until this particular activity, now she or he is 22 years old, so the student has mentioned, until this particular futures activity, the student has never got any of the chances in the student's life to say this. No one has ever asked whom you want to become.
Right.
So if you study future studies, it is really an eye-opening, and you will be able to take out of the box the students, because you train them in dreaming. Right, to dream about the future. To
redream what their actual future is.
Exactly.
But that's very interesting that you mentioned. I'm going to pivot to Dr. Sanath. Dr. Sanath, now obviously, you head the department and the faculty as well at KDU. But the question is, when something comes, especially in Sri Lanka, when something new like this comes, or even the ideation of it, they're very restrictive. A lot of the heads are very restrictive. So what made you think, hey, you know what, kids need this. I needed this when I was young. Maybe I might have not chosen the right path in my life. Exactly. What made you make that change?
Actually, I came across this subject when I was in the US for one of my training programs. And by training, I was a historian, right?
You're a historian as well? Wow,
and,
okay.
And I was just passing by, I saw a department at University of Manova, Department of Futures. So I was so, I was so amazed to see that word, and I went in and I asked, and he said, "What is your profession?" I said, "I'm a lecturer in history." They said, "Why can't you teach futures, right? Futures can be studied scientifically." And then onwards, in my particular course that I was following, we taught about the scientific futures. And then I thought, when I came here, what I saw everywhere was we are capitalizing on the past and the statistics of the past.
Yes.
And as you very correctly said, we don't give our children the room to think. So then in my university where I teach, they asked me when there was a curriculum revision, they asked me, we take new subjects for the next year. So I put the application and it got selected, and then this is the second batch that we run, and students love this subject.
Yeah.
And also I think we, as you say, Sri Lanka is in a bit of a crisis situation, right? In all terms. So we need our youngsters to think for the country, for the future of the country. If we just capitalize on the past and see that we can't do anything,
it's a different situation.
Exactly. So we want them to dream about for an example, if you want, where do you want to be in 2028? Where do you want to be in 2050? So those are the things that we basically discuss in our classroom.
Okay, that's very interesting that you mentioned, right? In terms of, okay, history is what you look at, and we all, thrive on history because we like the past experiences is what we need to learn in the future when it comes to medical, when it comes to law, when it comes to so many things.
Yeah.
But there was something very interesting that you mentioned, because if you take a car,
Yeah.
right? Today you have self-driving cars. You have cars that literally fly.
Yeah.
These are things that once upon a time we all dreamt about, right?
Exactly.
But it isn't reality now. But then if you take a school, it's still the same thing. We have the blackboard, we have the chalk. We have the whiteboard, we have the chalk. We have the book, we studied the book. It's not changed and it's not advanced. And that's just drawing people back and putting us into this framework of either working in a bank or either working in a hospital or either working in law or either working in like a desk job. We're just stuck in it. We're chasing the rat race. We're not happy with our lives, right? So what are you guys doing personally in terms of changing that mindset, changing the academia of Sri Lanka from grassroots, that takes it from grassroots as opposed to from university level? So what are you guys doing?
Right. So firstly, like one thing I thought was, as a futurist, when it comes to education.
Sorry, futurist.
Yes.
Wow, I like that term actually. Interesting.
Because professionally, like future studies, if you are like, professional term goes
Right,
as futurist, right? In Sri Lanka,
So
we are
you're
lack of
licensed
futurists.
for that as well?
Yes.
Okay.
And the other thing is like in addition to what Dr. Sanath explained, so after coming back from Hawaii, I also was fortunate to follow this particular program there. Thereafter, I established my own venture in Sri Lanka, Foresight Envoy. It is Sri Lanka's first established organization in future studies and leadership. So in that backdrop, being a futurist, again to explain what we were thinking about earlier. So when it comes to education, now earlier we were discussing about these alternative futures. Now in dreaming, if one is going towards in the line of technology, we always think, okay, all the screens will come up and no teachers, and by holograms you will have all the educators at home. You can be in the school at home, right? That is the main thing. So, but in alternative futures, futurists also think of a future, in futures making, of a screenless education. So that is also another alternative future we can talk about. And when it comes to the education system, what are the addings we are going to do in terms of future studies? Mainly we are focusing on taking the students outdoor to the garden, and we give them time to, because rather than letting them to dream in like in one particular classroom, yes, it is better to be them like in the garden area near a waterfall, and just asking them to lie down or whatever the thing, and we give them enough space to dream. That is the most important thing, and we have practically done that at KDU. In many sessions we do that, and also we are again trying to adapt these systems of drawing and crafting these things into this subject.
Okay.
So that makes.
But I'm going to cut you off there, right, a little bit. So what is the grassroots that you're doing? Because we're talking about schools. If you're being molded in school for years and years, these are crucial years of your life, right, as a kid. What are you guys doing in terms of that? Because we're talking about the kids. At the end of the day, even though they come into being youth, it starts with school. So what are you guys doing in terms of that?
In terms of schools, actually, from my organization also, we are leading programs in terms of future studies and leadership skills, so developing that. So our vision is to actually arm them with futures and leadership to have a better transformation in Sri Lankan society. So in that backdrop, we cater our programs there.
So you're talking about just university only, but not school?
Not even in schools.
Okay,
yes,
right,
to the school level, university level, and also further to the corporate level.
Right.
So those are the three main levels we are going to touch upon. So that is the main thing, because firstly we can't have a like one night change in any
Overnight
system, right? Sure. So slowly, first we have now within a very short period we have established this in Sri Lanka, and now we have started to lecture that at KDU as a subject. So afterwards, now slowly we are moving towards, after we have the system much rooted in the university system, then we are focusing in the schools.
Right. Okay,
yes,
that's very interesting. I feel like you might actually make a change for all of these subjects has been thought years and years, right? Dr. Sanath, I want to come to you now. You're obviously a historian, right? You study history. That's what you mainly studied. It could be the mummies. It could be all of these amazing, cool little things that we found cool as kids. You studied in a local setting as well, right? And you did go to the US to really discover this particular subject, or something called futurism, right? But the question is, there's so many other subjects as well internationally. For instance, I studied astronomy, which you don't have in Sri Lanka. Not even at university level you have astronomy, right? So these are very cool things. But then we don't really have that, We don't really have that in Sri Lanka. So why did you think of this specifically? Because you found it, you came back to Sri Lanka, now you want to explore it into Sri Lanka. Do you really think it's the right move, or do you think it's the right thing to do right now?
Yeah, I think if you look around, that is what you need, right? I mean, if you ask from...
Why would you say that?
If you ask from common people, politically, economically, socially, people need to ensure that they would have a better future. So for the past, let's say, 100 years, we were searching for that. But never in history in this country for the past 100 years, there was no stable line of history that people could think, okay, our futures are,
right.
Sustainable. So that is the gap that we have. Everybody wants it, and everybody becomes kind of, heartbroken in the end after your schooling or after university. But we want to change that. We want to give them, there's a word called civic power in the US society. One can make a change, basically. If you think that you can make a change, the country would be changed. And also you have to think on each level, even the state level, organizational level, and the individual level. Okay. I think that's what made me to go into this. And I think history without futures is a kind of a half-studied subject.
That's very interesting. Thank you so much, Doctor. Thank you so much, Alicia, as well. This is quite an interesting, avenue that you guys are looking at. But I want to talk about in terms of something that is big right now in Sri Lanka, and that's mental health amongst the youth, how that's going to be molded. We'll talk a little bit more on the other side, but in case you are definitely wondering where we are, it's beautiful, by the way. It is the Barnsbury, located at Barnes Place, Columbus 7. It's beautiful. You can come by, grab yourself a cup of coffee as well. So definitely don't forget, this is the Barnes Place. And with that, well, we're going to bounce into a short commercial break. Welcome back to Gen XYZ right here on Other Than 24, where we're talking about the future. Yep, you heard me right. The future of what exactly the youth can actually look forward to. We usually talk about history, we talk about the present, but we never talk about the future. And that is exactly where we're joining in with 3 individuals, by the way, talking to you about the future and something new to Sri Lanka. And this is future studies. Wasn't that right? Future studies,
yes,
right? That's how you do it.
Yes.
Obviously, you're a futurist as well, and that's incredible. And you're obviously working towards this as well, being a historian, and that's incredible. Now, we've got someone that is joining in right now, and this is, of course, Amangi. Well, thank you so much for joining us today. You're a third-year student in social sciences at KDU, right?
Yes.
So thank you once again, and you follow her subject, right? You follow this subject. I want to throw the first question to her because, we spoke a little bit about it, but I want to throw the question to you. How is this helping you in any way possible? Because you went through a rigid system in school, but now how exactly is it helping you?
Okay, well, I would say we have so many mechanisms to think about the past. But actually, if you think about it, we don't have a systematic approach to think about the future. And when I initially started the subject, I really didn't have an idea of what this entailed.
Right.
But I now understand how to systematically think about future. It's not just, dreaming about this or following trends. There is a certain method that you need to follow. So how it, helped myself is I'm in a lot of clubs. So there's a methodology that we learn, in particular called the Futures Wheel. You can use that to take decisions, strategic decisions. So I've used that in my personal life incorporated that as a member in certain clubs, how I can develop the club through my own actions, how those decisions will affect the club in the future. So that is just one example.
Okay, that's very interesting. So what is your end goal in life? What is your future, Amangi?
Well, I would say my ambition is to serve as an ambassador to Sri Lanka. That is my plan A. If I would talk about my plan B, I'm very interested in public relations and marketing. So I would like to pursue that path as well.
Okay, that's very interesting. So now, obviously, future studies gives you the strategy that you need to do or implement in building your future, right? So what is the structure you're following in terms of building that end goal that you have of being, a diplomat?
So because of this subject, I can plan the certain steps or decisions I need to take to get to my end goal. So let's say in case there is a certain problem that happens, futures can also help me to navigate out of those problems, because it helps me think of alternate decisions or alternate futures. So if I take this decision, where I would end up. If I take another decision, where I would end up. So that's how it has helped me.
So you went to school, right? You went to a local school in Sri Lanka, I believe, right? So you locally educated yourself as well. So in a local setting, whether it be, anything basically, any school in Sri Lanka, the local setting is you follow this, you follow that, you follow this, all in one square, one parameter, and one box. How was that like for you personally, in your view? Because many youth members are actually a part of that, rigid system as well in the box. They don't like it, because I'm sure a lot of people might have said, okay, in case you want to do art or you want to be a singer, they're going to look at your face and, just laugh at your face, right? That's the reality of a lot of youth members. How has that been for you? Because I know even being a diplomat, a lot of people might have laughed onto your face, let's be honest, okay? So how do you navigate that? How has it been for you, truly?
Well, it has been a big contradiction in my life, because in school there is a very systematic approach to learning. It's teacher focused and there is a certain method you need to follow. When you come to university, it's more student centric. So you need to find information. I mean, you say you are reading for a degree.
Right.
You're not studying for it. So it's a big contradiction, and I think even for other students to adjust to that change is difficult, because we still expect a lot from our teachers. We don't seek knowledge. So that's a big difficulty.
Okay, I'm going to cut you off there. You're not answering the question. So my question was, a lot of people might have laughed on your face on dreaming big. Being a diplomat is not easy. If someone says, okay, you want to be a lawyer, you want to be a doctor, they're going to be like, yeah, okay, cool, go for it, because that's the rigid system. But then you want to be a diplomat. That's a hard way to get through, and you need to really know, the strategies of actually getting and accomplishing that. People have laughed on your face, let's be honest. Has that happened?
Yeah.
Okay, so how do you navigate that? Because that's the reality of a lot of people that want to do, musicians, or they want to be dancers. People are going to laugh on their face. They're going to be like, do you want to be a failure? That's the rigid system that we've been following in school. So how do you navigate that? How do you actually work around that?
Well, yeah, it's a common thing, because the conventional approach is to be a doctor, an engineer, a lawyer. So definitely my path is extremely unconventional, and yes, I do hear comments about it. But how I navigate is, I don't really pay much attention to those personal comments, because I understand they have been brought up in a system, and I do understand why they think like that. But I think I like to think unconventionally, and I try to embrace that as much as possible. So that has helped me really stick to my path in life.
Okay, that's very interesting. Very deep, actually. That's important. I think that was the key message there as well, not listening to anything that comes by your ear. You just take it this way, throw it the other way, because that's important to, focus on the main goal. Now, coming back to you, Alicia, I think it's been quite a journey for you as well in terms of teaching these students, training them as well. How have you sort of navigated a lot of students that even come into your class? They would be like, no, I don't think it sounds like a scam. It doesn't really sound like something that I want to do. I don't think I'm going to get helped. I know what I want to do. That's where I'm heading. But that's the ideation. How do you change that? How do you work around that?
Yes. In that backdrop, my basic strategy is I show them pathways in futures. So one thing is academic pathways there, right? Start from BSc, MSc, then PhD, you can become an
I'm going
academic.
to cut you off there. Okay, so that is usually done in any university.
Exactly.
So what makes it different?
Exactly. So in future studies, that is one academic field, right? The other side is into the corporate level, you can take futures. There are professional storytellers in the other countries, which we in Sri Lanka I have rarely heard of, right? So in that backdrop, if you are a futurist, if you have seen the future, if you know what desired futures and the alternative futures, then you can become a, like, you know how to narrative. That you can take the narrative point of view and you can make scenarios, and out of that you can make stories. And with that, now stories in the sense not just dreaming or telling like bedtime stories.
Right.
This kind of we take from corporate, right? To become a professional storyteller in futures, you can analyze the past with the statistics available in the present, and in the futures you can say, okay, in 50 years of time, this technology might emerge. And your corporation, you have to align with these possible and preferred futures. And if this is your desired futures, these are the alternatives.
Okay,
So-
what about AI? Right now, AI is taking over. So then how do you navigate that? Because AI is literally taking over everyone's job.
Yes.
One fine day, that job might actually be taken as well.
Yes, so that is, yeah, sorry to interrupt. So
No.
that is one alternative future you are thinking of, that AI is taking over the jobs.
But it's happening right
It's
now.
happening right now, so it is in the present context. So in the future, there's another alternative, maybe not the AI, another technology might emerge, or else the humanity, the human civilization will again go back to rocks and sticks. So there are two sides of the
But
story.
see, Alicia, the possibility of that is it's almost below zero, right? Going back to rocks and sticks. But AI, technology, things getting even more advanced, us losing our jobs, is a possible thing that is 99.9%. So how do you navigate that when it comes to teaching these?
Yes, that is a very interesting question. So in terms of that, first we have to identify what types of jobs and what, like especially lecturing, TV presenters, these are the jobs mainly, even lawyers, right? Mainly you will be, like I would say, AI will replace your professions. So then if you see futures, you can think of the alternative avenues. For an example, professionally I'm a lawyer. Right? So when studying this, I have seen, like as you very correctly mentioned, the profession will be, replaced by AI in the near soon. So in that backdrop, that is why now I have more shifted towards, pursuing futures career. So likewise, like if that is because I have seen my future through the future studies, with the help of future studies.
What is
That
your future, Alicia?
My future, well, actually, to be honest, now if I take my alternative futures, once I was in military.
Really?
Yes. Then
Sri Lankan military?
Sri Lanka military.
Wow.
As a cadet officer, I was trained. Secondly, I became a professional lawyer. Now I'm into visiting lecturing, right? So that means into academia. And also I'm a researcher, that is more towards academics. Now I'm pursuing this career and I have my own venture in terms of that. So I work on that. Those are like the three alternative futures I've already pursued, I would say, to a certain
Okay,
extent.
right.
And next, I would say, I'm pretty sure you will laugh at that. My ultimate goal is one day I want to become an astronaut.
You want to be an astronaut?
Yes.
Whoa.
So,
Okay,
yes,
nice. I think
yes.
you would do that for sure. I didn't know that you worked in the military. I mean, that's incredible, to be honest. But then, see, something that I gained from what you said as well is, I'm going to throw this question to the doctor, right?
Yes.
Because Dr. Sanath, from what you heard from what she said, I was in military, I was a lawyer, I was now a visiting lecturer, I'm a business owner, what I'll be in the future is going to be an astronaut. It's going to complicate your entire journey, because like if you choose one subject, for example media, I'm going to go my entire life in media because I'll be developing experiences. This is like all over the place. So if you're going to teach because there are alternatives if you teach the future, but that's going to complicate the students, isn't that?
No.
So why do you say no?
I think it's a bit of old-fashioned
Right.
thinking. I think the more versatile you become, I think you want to do many things. If you get the big characters in the world like Elon Musk or Bill Gates, they are versatile in many areas, right? And there's no harm in it. I think as long as you enjoy what you do, and as long as you can do something to the society, I think in time to come the society will be more complex. Don't ever expect a linear kind of a fashion society anymore.
Right.
So multi-talented multitask people we need. I think in time to come, there'll be many, people with many skills and many outcomes.
All right, that's very interesting. I think in the previous segment, something that I closed off was in terms of mental health.
Yes.
I want to really touch base on this, and I want to throw this question specifically to, the youth as well, because we got to talk about them. Before, maybe in your era, when you went to school, when you went to university, mental health wasn't really a big thing. We thought, it's just a thought, throw it out the window, that's what you need to go. But it's a medically prone thing. We have so many people right now, especially youth, we're talking about youth, they can't cope with pressure, they can't cope with certain things in their life, or the pressure that's thrown into them because of this box that they're built into, because if they don't reach this thing in their life at this particular time, they're going to be a failure. It's too much of pressure. What happens? They go to iconic places in Sri Lanka or buildings in Sri Lanka, and they cut the line. They commit suicide, which is devastating. And that is a real problem of the youth right now. So I know you, Amangi, because obviously I know you have actually witnessed all of this that's happening as well. What is your take on that specifically?
I think the thought around mental health hasn't changed much, in my opinion. I think it's still considered sort of a taboo. People don't like to talk about it, and if you do talk about it, you are labeled as weak or you can't really handle the pressure. So I still think there's a lot more work that needs to be done around it. We haven't opened up spaces for people to freely open up about their mental health issues. So that's still a problem. I cannot suggest a solution to it, but from my perspective, it's still a problem. I don't think it has resolved.
Okay, so how do you maintain your mental health and a well-being base of things? I know one thing, you don't listen to people what they say or laugh on your face, but what's the other strategies that you utilize?
So I've developed my own coping mechanisms.
Interesting.
Certainly, we don't really talk about it, even with my friends. We don't really open up about it. It's more like a hush-hush thing. But I think everybody has their own personal coping mechanisms that they don't open up about.
Okay, so you don't want to tell us what the coping mechanism is?
Well, it's more related to things like journaling. It really helps. I know it has been used in certain mental health practices, but it does help.
It does help, yeah. So that's one of your coping mechanisms. That's great, but you're learning the future, right? That is what you're primarily learning. And I think the future, what you mentioned in the beginning as well, it covers economy, it covers mentality, it covers all of those aspects of things. How do you teach, or I'm just going to ask her this as well, because she's a student at the end of the day. What you teach is what she receives. So how do you think this has taught you to work around your mental health, no matter what difficulty you go through, whether it be exams, whether it be pressure, whether it be anything? How does that really help?
Well, one thing we learn about is possible futures. That future isn't just one thing, it's many. That's why we say futures. So in terms of mental health, what we can think about is certain scenarios or different scenarios in which we can improve mental health, or how we talk about mental health, or mental health discussions we have in the country. One way we can talk about is the possible futures of that.
All right, okay, so I think that's very interesting. We'll talk a little bit more on the other side, of course, because we're getting another student as well. So I want to continue that conversation with them when it comes to mental health as well. So thank you so much for joining us today on Gen XYZ. We'll have a little bit of a short commercial break right here, only on Gen XYZ. Welcome back to Gen XYZ right here on Other Than 24, where we are actually talking about the future. Yep, we are talking about the future, something we never talk about. And this is exactly why we've got a subject called the future studies. Now, this is something very unique to Sri Lanka as well. That's going to change a lot of people's minds and definitely change and mold the future of Sri Lanka. But we're joining in with obviously two lecturers, of course. We've got the lecturer, we've got Dr. as well, Dr. Sanath, and we're joining in with Rashmini, who's actually a student, the third-year student at KDU, also following this particular subject. Now, I want to ask you, now previously we asked one of your friends as well as to mental health, right? That's a very, very deep conversation. How do you navigate personally when it comes to mental health? Because you know it's a big situation right now in Sri Lanka.
When it comes to mental health, I believe that when you talk about it, it gets better. The problem, like when you share it with other people and you see that they are also going through stuff. So the more you talk, the better it gets. And also by understanding the futures, you see that there are alternative futures. So the mental health issues occurs in the present context, but through studying future and through future studies, you see that there are other options. So through that, I think you can handle and manage mental health issues better.
Okay. Now that's how I know that mental health is taught, because you gave the same answer that your friend gave as well. So you're doing a good job teaching it. No, but honestly, mental health is a big problem in Sri Lanka, right? It ends to the worst of things. So I'm glad that you're making this initiative of sort of like touching base on how mentality actually works. Now, off of the camera, Dr. Sanath actually mentioned something that you guys have introduced for the first time in Sri Lanka, I believe, something when it comes to mental health studies. So tell me exactly what this is exactly.
It's actually a program run by our medical faculty, and it's for the first time. We initiated it about a few weeks back, and it's for the entire staff, regardless of, you can be an academic, you can be an administrative staff, students, and military officers all together. They study that, and they are very proudly after the course. Actually, I was unfortunate on that day, I couldn't go there, but I have seen that they are wearing this badge now. So they are the agents of the mental health, and I'm so happy that KDU started it for the first time in Sri Lanka, and it works very well with our students now.
Okay, I think that it might definitely create an impact, but I want to pivot to you a little bit from something that he actually mentioned that's very interesting actually. You were a military trained individual, right? Now, in military, you straight up go to the worst of places, and this is of course the war, and that's not easy. It's going to really take a toll in your mind and your mentality as well. How have you taken this training in military? How have you sort of molded it into thinking, hey, you know what, this is what I can utilize in terms of teaching the techniques for the students, for the youth of Sri Lanka? Hey, this is how you navigate your mentality. How has that come into play?
I think in terms of giving an answer in terms of future studies to that, I would say in military they are using used futures, kind of.
Like what? Can you give me an example?
For an example, if you take a war scenario, we are being military trained. Okay, this is the setup, and this is the mechanisms you are going to do. These are the drills. So likewise, you are trained for that. You have seen it. You are using. It's called used future. Right? So you anticipate, okay, this is going to be the scenario, and for that you are being trained. So your mind knows, okay, this is what's coming up, then you are ready to face the challenge. So it's the same kind of replica that happening academically in future studies as well.
Wait, okay, so you're saying you're trained to sort of face the circumstances going to be detrimental, right?
Yes.
But isn't that sort of suppressing? That's basically suppressing. You're suppressing the circumstances of your mental health, and you're basically facing it. You're facing death.
Not death actually. It's kind of you are like
the circumstances.
Yes. So the thing is like when you have been through a certain scenario, right? When you have lived in that future, you know how to tackle it. You have seen it. So that is what, like something very much similar to future studies, what we are doing also. We give scenarios, and in alternative futures we forecast. So in that
military, that's not what happens, is it?
No, that happens.
They suppress it.
Because with many exercises, right, there are many different exercises going on. So with these things, they train, right? Mm-hmm. I'll take just one example like beach march, and there are many other different exercises done by Sri Lanka military. So in that backdrop, you are trained for that terrain. You are trained for that circumstances. So training means you are using used future again. That means
But Alicia, that breaks a person. When they train you, they put you through those circumstances.
it's not
It breaks you, doesn't it?
that is the negative scenario which you have taken up. I would say
So
if
there
you
is
consider
okay.
it in a positive way, it makes you more like more. I would say like you are ready to face the challenge, and it strengthens you actually. So that is the purpose
how do you use those
of.
circumstances when it comes to future studies? Like, how do you incorporate that to your field now?
Yes. So especially with my experiences and also being a criminal defense counsel also
Yeah, you're a lawyer as
professionally.
well.
Yeah,
Like,
so
it goes on,
professionally.
yeah.
So with all these things, what we do is like we are preparing for something. For an example, if you are a lawyer for the next day case, you are preparing. So you do the entire argument, you do the everything, you not reading or taking everything. So that is against like you again doing the used future. And the most important thing is, now earlier I mentioned the significance of studying future studies is, now it is not just predicting or forecasting, we are moving it towards mainly like creating alternative futures, that is shaping the desired future. In that aspect, the most important thing again we are touching upon is anticipating imaginations, right? And anticipating emergencies. So in that scenario, if you are trained for that, through the future studies, academically, if you are going through these steps, then automatically it absorbs, like, because it's a like
physically as well, yeah,
exactly.
practically,
So
yeah.
practically, that's how it happens.
Oh.
And also in terms of mental health, couple of times you were emphasizing about that factor. And before coming for this particular program, right, very interesting, I read one of these articles published at Cambridge. It's a 2023, one of the latest ones. It talks about the adolescent health services in Sri Lanka. So they have taken, now normally if I ask you what is the definition for youth, right, there's no universally accepted definition, right, but UN has recognized individuals aged from 15 to 25 is considered youth. But in Sri Lanka, in this particular article, they have taken the population as age 10 to 24. So there they have calculated 5.2 million population fall into that particular age category. And among them, 7% out of these 5.2 million, 7% has attempted suicide.
Wow.
Right? And also 35% they are experiencing interpersonal violence. So in these scenarios, now this is the ground level real scenario in Sri Lanka. So in this backdrop, if anyone like my students, which they have followed future studies, they see the scenarios. So then when they see the scenarios, they create scenarios, and with the desired futures, they are thinking of alternative futures. So in that backdrop, they know that this is not the end of my life.
There is more to it, basically.
There are many choices, right? And also while studying future studies, and we give them the space to like drawing and to create stories, with that they get a chance to express themselves. That is most important when it comes to mental health, because that is what lacks in our traditional education system. So I think future studies can do an immense task when it comes to
Melding.
Yes,
Yeah.
molding
That's incredible, actually. Now, I also really find this very interesting because we never talk about the future, especially as youth members as well, talking about the future. Now, I want to throw the question right back at you as well, and because I asked your friend as well what your ultimate goal is. What is your ultimate goal?
Actually, I do not have a specific ultimate goal. I plan to do a master's in international relations and figure it out as it goes. I do not have a specific goal in mind. So there are alternative possibilities.
But doesn't that sort of like perplex you? For instance, okay, you don't really know what to do. For an example, okay, you're just going with the flow of life. Suppose things like COVID-19 hit us, the economic crisis hit us. All of these things are very contradicting factors. Like, it is going to break your goal or the plan that you have. So that's not really taking you in directions, is it? Isn't that going to be a little bit perplexed?
Not really, but if we take the COVID-19, so if you had a goal, like if you had a plan, a specific plan, those factors
get altered,
alter the goal. So when I chose when I picked KDU, I wanted to pursue international relations, but then I found social sciences. So then I figured out that I prefer social sciences more. So that is one of the factors I take when figuring out the future as well, because I didn't see myself studying social sciences, but now that was the best decision for me.
Right.
So I have a specific path in regards to international relations and social studies, but I don't have a specific goal.
Okay, so what's the message you have for those that are watching in right now as well when it comes to the future? If they want to look at their future or mold their future, what is the message you have for the youth?
I believe that the future can change. It's very unpredictable. So, like I said, like you can figure it out along the way. If you know what kind of possible futures you have, you can figure it out along the way. That's what happened with me. So I believe that it will be beneficial to not
Figure it out basically on the way of things. Yeah,
Yes.
it does work to a certain extent as well, which is interesting. And I know you were a little trained, of she's like, no, this is what you say.
Not really.
No, but honestly, you've done a great job, by doing this, bringing this initiative to Sri Lanka as well, and that's great. But, a lot of the people, especially when we talk about other universities, we're talking about the schools, we're talking about so many other people in Sri Lanka need this.
Yes.
So what are you personally doing as an initiative to get the message out there and say, hey, we're doing this, we've bought this for the first time in Sri Lanka. We are molding and telling students and the youth of Sri Lanka how to look forward to a healthy future.
Yeah.
That's the way I'm going to put it. A healthy future. What are you doing?
Yes, thank you for that opportunity actually. So in that backdrop, we are Foresight Envoy. My organization is locally facilitating this event. It's a workshop, one-day workshop. The theme goes as Futures Thinking and Transformation Leadership. So we are conducting this particular workshop in Colombo on 4th April. So if anyone is interested and you are free to reach us, come and learn this new subject. It is the reason that rather than going as a lecture or a webinar, we are doing a workshop because we want to do many engagement activities and we really want to give this content, and with these practical chances we are giving them to analyze these mainly the theoretical aspects in practical scenarios. So then they will also they will embrace the subject subject-wise as well as in terms of for a better transformation of the society of Sri Lanka. So that is the main aim, because we personally believe that this is the right time for Sri Lanka to have this social transformation in terms of futures thinking and leadership. So that is why we are mainly focusing on transformational leadership also throughout the workshop. So that will be happening on 4th April in Colombo.
All right, that sounds amazing. Now, something that you mentioned was in terms of you sort of transform, and it's leadership as well, right? You transform their ultimate goal. But I want to pivot to Dr. Sanath for a little bit, because, I think a little bit of a factor right now in Sri Lanka. You studied in the US, right? You studied in the US, but there's so many people right now, because of the circumstance in Sri Lanka, they want to migrate. Right? That's a huge factor in Sri Lanka. How are you navigating this? Are you promoting and saying, hey, it's okay, if this is your future, you can look at the alternative, go out of the country? Are you promoting that, or how are you navigating that?
I think the times are changing. I think we don't want to promote people going out. We want them to come back. We want to promote them staying here and to show them what are the possibilities. And we exactly want to change this mindset, because this is the country that we need to develop. We need to actually see developed one day. So therefore, all my students, what I say is, look at what is around. Because recently, I just heard in an interview from a person who's branding India. He says, there's no brand like Sri Lanka in world tourism, right? If they say so, the only problem is we don't see that here. We always look at the West or
greener grass, rather.
Yes.
Yeah.
So I think that's what we promote, and I think times are changing now. I think people are now thinking of coming back. I'm sure that in next 5-10 years.
It's going to be the case, right? Yeah. And that's wonderful. Before we end, we've come to the end of this interview, of course. I'd like you, all three of you actually, to say one word that describes a future, or this particular aspect of things. What's the one word? You have 2 seconds to think.
This is pretty much challenging.
Yeah, one word that would define the future.
Imagining.
Imagining.
Yes.
Fantastic. Doctor?
Happiness.
Happiness. I love that.
Innovative.
Innovative. Ooh, that's interesting. Well, thank you so much once again for doing this. I think you guys are going to do an extraordinary job in Sri Lanka in promoting the future, planning the future of Sri Lanka, in helping so many youth members. So thank you so much for doing this right here on Gen XYZ. Well, with that, of course, it's a conclusion right here on Gen XYZ on this particular episode, but we'll be back on a different episode. Don't forget, we'll be available on youtube.com/otherderana English. And in case you are wondering where this beautiful place is, it's the Barnes Place. And of course, the Barnesbury, located at the Barnes Place, Colombo 7. It's beautiful. You can come by. They've got great dinner. They've got great lunch. They've got great breakfast as well. Definitely come by and enjoy it. So with that, this is a wrap right here on Gen XYZ.
I can feel your love pulling me up from the underground. I don't need my drugs. We could be more than just part-time lovers. I can feel your touch picking me up from the underground. I don't need my drugs. We could be more than just part-time lovers. We could be more than just part-time lovers.